Hi, I'm Cherie Lindbergh, and welcome to Elevated Life Academy, where we share real stories of healing, hope, and transformation. Tune in to hear how everyday people are rising above and lighting the way for others. Welcome to another episode of Elevated Life Academy, and I am your host, Cherie Lindbergh. And today, I think we're going to be in for a treat. We're going to have a unique conversation. Our guest here is Megan. I'll let her introduce herself in just a second. But I met, Megan, I'm trying to remember 3 years ago now. Has it been that long? Probably.
It'll actually, okay, 2020. Wow. In February, it will be 4.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I met Megan, 4 years ago, and she was going through a life transition. I'll let her share about that. And we're going to talk about her story and where she's arrived today. So without further ado, Megan, please introduce yourself.
Oh, hi, Cherie. I'm Megan. I am a grief coach and author, facilitator, and a certified Brainspotting practitioner. And I like to tell people that I bring soul into the practical realities of life. So helping you find deeper meaning and purpose in the midst of the stuff that you have to do in the real world.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about how we met and where you were at that time and what was happening for you.
Yeah, so you may not recall because it was a large group, but I did my level 1 brain spotting in February of 2022.
Okay.
And about 2 weeks before that, 3 weeks, my mother died completely unexpectedly. One of the, like the kind you see on the news where it's like the person's on the basketball court and they fall over and you say, "What happened?" And the people are like, "I don't know." Well, that's what happened to my mom. I was already signed up to do the level 1, and Spirit said, "Do it anyway." And I had emailed you or Paul, probably it was Paul, and I was like, "I have this. I might need to, is it okay if I have grief come out in the training?" And he was like, "Come."
Mm.
So I came, and the training helped me begin to be with me. Literally, the day the training ended, my father's illness started, and he started his death decline. So I was not able to pursue brain spotting as a practitioner, but I found a brain spotting therapist that I went to. And I started my process or my practice of incorporating self-spotting in my own journey and journaling. And so I lost both of my parents in the winter of 2022. And then I became the administrator for their estates. And when we met more closely at the intensive, I had done level 2 brain spotting. I'd had this amazing experience in level 2. And I was like, there's really something here. And I was working clinically at the time in my own private practice part-time and still working on settling the estates. But private practice didn't feel like it fit. And in the middle of the training, I was like, I don't even know what's next. Like, I don't know what my goal is. I don't know where I want to go. I don't know anything, which is very weird because my whole life prior to that, I was like, this is what I want, and this is how I get there, and this is how it is. And I just remember sitting when you were holding the thing, and I'm like looking out the window over here, and I'm like, all I want to do is play. And that intensive, I came home and like literally I just couldn't go back into my life the same way. I mean, I needed to do certain things. I was teaching a college class, I was seeing clients, but I knew in my soul I couldn't stay doing this. Like I couldn't make myself go back to be who I was. I needed to allow myself to be who was next, which actually meant a protracted period of like living in this void of unknownness,
Mm.
which was both incredibly uncomfortable and scary, but also very exciting and creative.
So how did you, because I know our listeners are going to wonder about this, how did you reconcile, or how did you let yourself be in that space? Because I know a lot of people, when they get in that space, it's really uncomfortable and they'll like make themselves make a decision or get distracted with something else because it's so uncomfortable to just be with the unknown.
It is. I would say there's kind of three things I did. I am a huge writer. I mean, now I have a book that's out in the world and I have several pieces that have been published, but I have always written myself for myself. So I've discovered that brainspotting and writing go together, and I'll just put a little plug in for the Bone to Brain Journal and the writing community and the brainspotting community, which I hadn't yet found, and it might not have even yet existed. But in my own world, that process helped me be with what was rather than trying to either suppress it or solve it. I saw you for a couple of coaching sessions, which helped me place it in a larger context of ancestral trauma, as well as, I believe for me personally, past life trauma. My spiritual gifts also started to awaken tremendously over this time. And so although it was uncomfortable, another shout out to Heather Corbett, I joined her VIP community and just started cultivating those gifts that, again, didn't solve, but gave me the resource to be there in it. And then the third thing is that literally, if I tried to push ahead or do the things that I'd done before in my life, it just blew up. I mean, it was literally like the divine or the universe being like, this is not your time yet. This is. And so I started to kind of recognize that pattern. And as I recognized that and allowed it to be, the blowing up happened less and the opening happened more.
So let's talk about the opening. So over time, where has this led you?
Yeah. So a year ago, I closed my private practice and I opened the doors of a new path. One of the pieces of writing that I was working on over the time was kind of documenting my own journey related to like what I wish I would have had. So I created a resource for myself to walk myself through the process of settling the estate and grief. And then simultaneously, actually around the time that we were getting to know each other and the intensive, 4 people in my life, my best friend from growing up, my husband's best friend from growing up, and our closest local friend here, all had parents put on hospice. All of them were going to be going into this new weirdo role of both losing their parent, but then also having to deal with all this system stuff. And none of the 3 of them are in professions that really are used to doing that. Like a teacher, human resources at a college level, that kind of person. So they started asking me for help, but I didn't have capacity. So I just started to send them the stuff I created. And they were like, this is really good. And so I started sharing more. And basically, long story short, what came out of the opening was a whole book that's now out there, A New Path. But also this desire to like share my inner story. So I started writing and put things out for publication. I got to give a when story. I've met new people in business. And what I thought I was going to be doing was helping people settle their parents or whoever's affairs. And what it's turning into is I actually help resource the professionals that are working with people. So this could be helping financial advisors, attorneys, home care health workers, real estate agents understand a little bit about grief and how they can not be psychotherapists, but just having a little basic understanding of like what's happening in their client's body and brain so that they can better meet them with the book or some other things. As well as I say, I help solopreneurs, SOULO-preneurs, who are heart-led humans kind of lean in and also deal with the kind of the secondary stuff that comes in and use that as soul work to grow who they are, while also helping create some processes. I think too often we look at processes and systems as like, ew, yuck. But I've cultivated a system that seeks to find the spirit in that, so that should something happen or should you need to share with somebody else, they can kind of step in and help you.
So talk more about your processes. Give us some meat on your processes.
So related to if you are in a situation where you need some support and help, and this could be as a professional or as a person receiving, I actually talk about our colleagues, our friends, as our trees that help nourish us. And if you're familiar with how trees work, they send nourishment underground. And so I actually have a system in the book where it's like, what kind of a tree do you need? An oak tree is like a get her done tree. Like they'll come in, they'll run it for you, they'll see your stuff. They're the person to have do the intensive labor stuff. A weeping willow tree is the person that you call when you're like, I just need somebody to say, like, can you just hear me mad, sad, whatever, and not try to squish my emotion? Fruit tree helps distract you, that kind of a thing. And a redwood can do all of that. So I think distinguishing the kind of help you need and who are the people that can meet that.
Gotcha.
The professional helpers, I call them the forest rangers. And I think a forest ranger knows the overall journey, the map, but they don't know your territory. So I think when we turn to people and we expect them to know in our own life, they don't know our life, but they can say, here's this system. And so which forest ranger knows what? So that's a part of it. Then the next part of the systems, I would say, is really breaking it down into small, digestible pieces related to, like, in mental health, we have what's called the wellness wheel of like the quadrants of life. Well, I've created something that I call the life, love, and legacy wheel. That's like, what are the practical components that go along with this? And so when something happens in our lives, personally or professionally, this needs to be taken care of too. And so how can we bring values? How can we bring spirit into this so that it's not checking something off of a list like, oh, I've dealt with this, but like, well, let me think through who would be the person. So can I use an example of like when I've worked with a client with this?
Absolutely. Yeah, please do.
So a woman came up and said, I gave a talk related to something at a women's entrepreneur thing. And she said, I have my stuff for my life, but hearing you talk, what do you have for people in business? I realize I have nothing for my business if something were to happen to me beyond like my husband should do it. And I'm thinking that's probably, I need something more than that. And so I listened to her and we got her core values and her human design. And I do something called an embodied vision session. Now she's in my local area. So I took my Brainspotting stuff, my sand tray stuff, my card deck, and we went in and guided, and she kind of led herself through the process of like what she does now in her business. And her primary question was, who's going to take care of my clients? What's going to happen with them? Who calls them? What do they say? And so I led her through a process where she intuitively said it. I documented it and went through what all of that would be. And she was able to distinguish like, oh, I need 3 people to help. I want my husband to do X, but I don't want him to have to do stuff with the clients. I need my bookkeeping person, my accountant can handle this part that goes with the money. It's really who's going to do the interaction in the moment with the clients. Oh, I want to give them 3 choices. This is what this will be. This is what this will be. And then I have a workbook for people to follow it through related to like actually scripting the things, or I help you script the things. And so I would say what I've learned is that when people go about it in the, like trying to think about it in the logical way, it brings up all this stuff. But for the people that resonate with me, it's like in there, and I just help them bring out what's in here and put it into word. And for me, that's why brain spotting and some of these other modalities that I say like help stitch our lower brain and our right brain, upper brain together, and our left and our right, help pull out what that is.
Very interesting. So, what I'm hearing you say is that you support folks in a process, but it's more of an embodied process, is what I'm hearing. Letting their values and their desires emerge, and then you document it. So then that becomes the plan.
That exactly. And I really like people to think of their documents as like their living legacy and the love letter that they leave to people. I'm so not about scaring people into doing this.
Yeah.
I'm so not about being like, well, what about? Well, what about?
Yeah.
I really believe that this work is core and value centric and soulful, but I also believe it helps you grow into who you are. So, for example, someone else I was talking with and we're kind of in conversation, her business is growing and she is recognizing she's grieving an older version of her business, even though she's actually going exactly where she wants to go.
Yes. Yes. I've talked to so many people about this, even like with the coaching that I do, is that people don't understand when you expand, that's beautiful and that's wonderful. And often grief comes with it because you've got to let go of something here to step into there.
Exactly, which is, I actually lead workshops called Make Space for Grief, because I really believe if we spend time making space for it regularly, there's wisdom, gratitude, joy, expansion.
You're honoring the journey is what I'm hearing. You're honoring the journey. You're making it a meaningful process.
Yes.
Yeah.
And some of this also grows out of my own, you know, I was just talking to somebody and I said, if you want, we could do X, we could do Y. And I said, you know what, with the well, I realized I created a whole eulogy and memorial service for myself because I needed to do a ritual to close it. It was right to close it. But I have so much gratitude, like, and I needed to have space to grieve the closing of what I thought would be, but didn't, to honor, like we do often at a memorial service with people's lives, to honor all that the well gave me, like 12 or 13 years of good things.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're not only that, but I'm hearing you're also honoring and basically saying goodbye to a part of you that is you're stepping into a new part and new. Yeah. I hear
Yeah. All of that. And so I'm very much about embodied way of doing, of being, of you know, and the other thing that there's so much fear in the world right now. And I think our forms and our processes encourage that. And so I'm looking for any way that I can help empower people not to like the form. I don't like the forms. I don't want to have to do the forms. But how can we Aikido it a little bit? Like, if I have to do this intake form with this client that's 14 pages long that I feel like is getting in the way of my doing the good work, how can I use that form as a way to help embody the practice and also build rapport and relationship with somebody?
Yeah. So I'm hearing again, very relational process.
Yes, very.
Wanting to shift it out of a system and forms and rules and regulations into more of a meaningful relational process.
Very, very, very much so. I'm working with a business owner right now, a SOUL-opreneur, who's a helper, who is also looking at expanding beyond. And, you know, we've been looking at what, not just her values and her design and she incorporating brain spotting, but also like, okay, wait a second. When I'm even in the middle of doing this paperwork and I'm feeling this happen, we do part of my contract with her is co-working. So like we'll be there. And if she hits a point in the middle where she's like, I feel it's happening, like that the stress has started to hit that not helpful threshold, we stop and we do a little bit to get together, live time, and then come back into it.
Almost like it sounds like to me like a release valve. Like you get to a certain point, then you process that, whatever that is, to release that so that they can come back in and do the work again.
Exactly. And what I'm discovering as I'm doing this with folks is it doesn't take a long time to do that in depth. It just takes some consistent, right? So every time we hit this point where, you know, we've learned like what in your body is the tell that's like, I'm hitting my, I should stop for a moment now place. And then we do a little spotting, or we do a little breathing, or I'm level 2 Reiki. So we could do a little Reiki or throw a little bit of like, I feel into what is the right, and we do that together. But I'm amazed how quickly that moves through, or with somebody who thought the grief was going to be about X really ended up becoming about Y, say, as we were moving into the holidays and all of this. And it was like, okay, so that grief part that's there, it wants this. This is not the time for that because we're working on your business right now. And, you know, when, and we actually pulled out the calendar, like, when on the calendar will you do this?
So again, being very honoring and thoughtful and intentional.
Very. Very.
Yeah. I would imagine that, you know, as I'm listening to what you're talking about, Megan, like how helpful that would be to help people move through these life transitions, very significant life transitions with maybe, I'm searching for the words right now of how, I don't know, it just sounds comforting versus you're in it alone. It's this process that everybody goes through because everyone loses their parents at some point. But the process that you're talking about is you're helping people use this process as basically a blossoming of the next them.
Yes, that well said. And I think it's all transition. I mean, there's transition constantly. And I say change equals loss, loss equals grief. Grief, when we face it, is growth. Every client I've ever worked with, I think I've probably started off with saying, I think all therapy is grief therapy. You're coming here to change. And, you know, when I was officiating more weddings, I would talk about how grief is a part of the wedding process. And people would look at me like I had 3 heads. And I'd be like, just there. So this is not new to me. But being able to kind of think about how, like, there's the survival spiraling of grief, but then as you can lean into it, it can become like listening deeper, which leads to like grief as a way of becoming. And that is, I would say, what I would bring. And I think a lot of our cultural stories are either when we're in the despair spiral of surviving, or I finished it and look, I'm done, it looks great. And I like to meet people and help them be in that middle liminal space where we don't know, and to say that's not a failure. We just live it differently. And things are going to grow, and I'm excited for that for you.
Yeah, I would imagine, you know, depending upon where they're at in their process, like you were saying, like in the despair process, it's hard to imagine, again, when you're in that place, how things can be different or better or good. And so you're there helping them walk through the nitty-gritty, and also maybe bringing or holding some space for hope for what can change and blossom in the future.
All of that. You know, when I was in ministry, I worked with people in their 80s, but as a psychotherapist, I have not ever worked with someone in their 80s. This fall, I worked with someone in their 80s. And with spouse loss, which is huge for a whole host of reasons. And I would say exactly what you're saying. First of all, it was a good teacher for me because I wouldn't have thought to introduce brain spotting to somebody in their 80s, but I took the risk. And we were able to find a spot that that shifted and felt a little more open. It felt lighter than it had felt the whole time. And so it might sound small, but it was like, here's this little spot that you can go to. It won't take it away, but then that kind of became an anchor. And then
I just see so many applications for this as you're talking. Because I'm thinking about, I had a client that was scared to work with someone who was terminal. And so I consulted with them and helped them hold the brain spot and the space for their client who was terminal, who was making those decisions about legacy and, preparing the family and writing down all their desires and all that. And that person did end up passing away. And my client said to me, what a beautiful process it was that she got to hold the space while that client was preparing to transition.
I have the goosebumps all over.
Yeah.
When I was in ministry, and so getting to do chaplaincy and things, it's not that it's easy, but there's something very sacred about holding space for people as they're reckoning with the deepest questions of life. And there's something about preparing our documents at whatever stage you are that makes you look at mortality. And I think that can be a very life enriching and exciting, joyful, and sometimes even playful place. And yet, I certainly wasn't trained in school, psychotherapy school, to hold that kind of space.
Right.
And I don't think a lot of the folks are. We don't do that. We fight death. Our medical system is about fighting death, curing it. And I'm not saying I don't want people to get treatment or any of those things. And I don't think that death is the end or the enemy.
So where has this all led you to now? Are you in different situations with folks? Many different situations
So
this work? Yeah.
Yeah, in 2025, I was in many different situations and really kind of allowing myself to experiment with and I enjoy all of them. And I really feel called to the Make Space for Grief workshops are for a variety of situations. They're either local or they're virtual for people to be together. The solopreneur work, where I am really supporting heart-led humans who are working with grieving people. And so I kind of hold their space and help them with their own process so that it can then ripple outward in that parallel process. Almost like in traditional psychotherapy, like having a welcome to perimenopause. The word is here on my tongue, but not coming out. Supervisor or consultation, but very much more focused on process and grief and how do you build embodied practices in with yourself and the clients that you're serving. And then with my book, trying to resource in a wider way both those who are working with funeral homes, death doulas, end-of-life planning centers, financial advisors, and also individual families who are looking for a resource for their families to have a conversation, to open a conversation. But I'm moving away from doing the direct work with the person who's experiencing the loss or planning for their death to helping the people who are working with that.
Yeah. So supporting the supporters.
And then trying to teach them some of these embodied practices that I found so transformative and healing in my own life. Not to say that they have to become a certified brain spotting therapist or a licensed marriage and family therapist or a grief coach, but to say, hey, here are some of these things, these ways of being that might nourish you and those you serve.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that would be important to share with our listeners?
Let me ponder that for a second. I can't think of anything right off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, we will make sure that all your socials are connected to this podcast so that if people would like to reach out, and to be honest, I might be reaching out for my own appointment too, because I really want to be thoughtful too about how, you know, I'm 57. My hope is that I'm going to be working beyond my 70s if I'm healthy and I feel good because I love what I do. But I also want to be very thoughtful, how you started off this podcast, having a plan for like when something does happen to me, there's this plan that somebody can follow and make it a meaningful process for everybody that's involved.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. I am actually, Cherie, I'm in the process and it's not hit the press yet. So that's why of designing a container. I'm going to run a beta group this year. Um, so I mean, it would be an investment, but smaller, to say what happens if we bring a small group of intentional solopreneurs together to walk through this process, to support each other in it, to come up with a plan, and to potentially also find people that would be trustworthy others, because our closest, if something happens to us, our closest people are going to be affected too.
Right. Absolutely.
So it's like, from a tree perspective, the closest trees are going to need maybe an outer tree. And so I want to see if we can help people find some outer trees.
That sounds wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming today and sharing about your experience. And I wish you well on your continued journey.
Thank you, Cherie. Thanks so much.